Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so we were talking about in the last segment, Ron Paul. Goodness, my producer threw me off. He sent me a note saying that the popularity of Bernie Sanders, and this is actually a really good thing. Bernie Sanders is really pulling from the same base of people that were in love with Ron Paul in 2008. And, that says a lot about the libertarian strand that is very present in our younger, the millennials, right? Millennials tend to be libertarian-esque. Now, that's a good thing because I like the fact that Bernie Sanders is going to be pulling away from that group that could vacillate towards the Republican Party with a person like Rand Paul. Thankfully, Bernie Sanders is here and he's already gotten a huge head start, right? So he's going to be the person to pull the millennials. Here's a nuance that people may disagree with, and it is what it is. Here's a nuance about that particular demographic that Bernie Sanders' team needs to be aware of, that Republicans and the Rand Paul team, the Ron Paul team, did not care about. There's a strand in libertarianism that really ignores the plight of minorities, and not just minorities, marginalized groups in general, women, blacks and Hispanics. And, this is not categorical, and I'm not condemning all libertarians, but it is just the fact of the matter. You see in the ideology of libertarianism, the belief that the government should not impose any type of, should not use force to impose anything on people, that the government should completely get out of the way. And inclusive in that conversation is generally civil rights, where the government should not compel people to not discriminate. And there's plenty of footage on Rand Paul and Ron Paul speaking directly to that effect. That often unspoken strand in libertarianism can be problematic for Bernie Sanders because he's pulling that demographic. He's absolutely pulling that young, white, millennial, corporate guys, gamers. He's pulling that demographic, and they're doing great for him right now, but they can't get complacent there. And I think that is a potential that has the potential of happening. And this is a starting position, right? The starting position for Bernie Sanders with the minority vote is 93% for Hilary Clinton, 3% for Bernie Sanders. So the starting position is so far behind that they don't have a minute to spare. They don't have a minute to be apathetic, not 1 second. They absolutely must ferociously go after minority voters, because he's going to do well with that young millennial libertarian-esque demographic. He's already doing well there. Here's the question that I want to pose to you guys, and I don't know. Do you think Sanders would start to lose in that core demographic if he begins to ferociously go after minority voters and women voters? Now, that's a conversation for another day. Maybe we could have it now. I don't know. I don't think I have enough time to have that conversation. But because of the nature of that young millennial white guy demographic, they're serving him well right now. That's 10,000 people show up. I would say about 75% to 80% are those young white guys who are either in college or they're working in corporate America. They're doing well in that demographic. Do you think that if Bernie Sanders, and this is just a question I want to ask you, do you think Bernie Sanders will start to lose in that core group if he begins to go after minorities, women, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? That's the question of the day. Now, last time I asked the question, you guys gave some really brilliant answers, and I don't have time to go through all of them because they're really philosophical, and they're very deep in economic policy. Some suggestions. One guy sent me an email through Facebook, and it was a brilliant analysis, but it was very, 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 very long, so I don't even have time to go over the air. But the question I want you guys to answer today is, Can Bernie Sanders, and to be redundant, I'm going to repeat it for the third time, can Bernie Sanders maintain his core demographic, which is very similar to the libertarian demographic that went after Rand Paul and Ron Paul in 2008 and potentially Rand Paul? Can he maintain that core demographic while simultaneously catering to, because that's what it is, ferociously going after Black voters, Hispanic voters, and women voters? Now, on the surface, everyone is going to say yes, but you have to go beneath the surface to really understand the identity of his core group. And if nothing else, I think it's going to make them have a moment of reflection. And I'll just leave it at that. But don't take my word for it. I want your input. So when you watch this video, or if you're listening on Spreaker, you can leave a comment there, or you can go to YouTube and leave your feedback with regards to, what do you think? Can he chase after the Black vote and not lose any of his libertarian-esque? Because they're not true libertarian. They vacillate. That's a very interesting group that in 2012, everyone was trying to tell President Obama, you need to pay attention to this group, because it's a swing vote. They have very liberal social beliefs, and they have some rather conservative but still liberal, they vacillate on economic policies. And then now, of course, Bernie Sanders absolutely gets the left in terms of economic policy. So it's a hodgepodge. And that's the interesting thing about progressives in general. Progressives in general, it's a big tent. It is you're going to have people who, on some conversations, we can start arguing with each other. I mean, we could get into it as if we were conservatives versus liberals, right? And you see that. You see, like, with the African-American vote and the LGBT community, right? Black people are overwhelmingly religious and they oppose gay marriage. But in the same breath, we will be side by side standing with the LGBT community on other issues. So it's very possible to have antagonistic demographics inside of one party and one side of one movement and inside of one campaign. Bernie Sanders can absolutely, he's going to have to, right? Not philosophically speaking, not rhetorically speaking. He is absolutely going to have to be able to put underneath the tent of his campaign people who generally disagree on a lot of things. People who believe that racism is a huge problem, and then people who think, come on, you guys, we're still talking about race. People who believe that women need equal work for equal pay, and then other people who believe, come on, guys, we're still talking about this. So we have to be mindful of the contention that could be present, but absolutely, he needs all of those demographics. So I want your greater wisdom. I don't want to, I don't have the answer to it. I have my own suspicions, and I suspect that at a bare minimum, it's going to require us to reflect on our individual ideologies, our individual, and I don't say this in prejudices, but I don't mean that in the sense of racism. We all have our biases. That's what I should have said. Our individual biases, our individual hangups, and it's going to require us to look at ourselves a little bit and say, okay, you know what? For the greater good, we do need to reach out to this demographic. We do need to bring women more into the fold. We do need to, and Bernie Sanders, absolutely, if two demographics that he's behind on, minorities and women, and we absolutely need to take it to the Clinton machine. Nothing against you, Hillary, except just in general, to be honest with you, I don't want a dynasty. I absolutely am opposed to having another Clinton or a Bush. It's nothing against you, Hillary. Yeah, so that's that.